and we're going to tackle what I think it's one of the toughest hurdles initially, the first time somebody sits in front of 1071, is that's the business ownership status. And I say that because principal owners, that's not a hard thing. That's not a hard ask. Okay, you're probably doing that anyway in a lot of cases, just from a who are we going to go after if this thing goes south, right? From a credit standpoint. And the demographic information, you kind of done that before for other parts of Reg B, or if you're a HMDA bank for HMDA transactions. It's this thing here that's kind of new, and then it's not what we initially thought it was going to be. They've added some things that we don't like. And so page 14, procedure requirements. No, nothing specific to this. Okay, but there are considerations. So let's take a look at what it is first. You've got to ask a question. Okay, what is the business ownership status relative to the small business? And that's not just for legal entities. This could be the mom and pop, and the sole proprietor, the individual. And so the question that we're going to ask, okay, what is the business ownership status? What it says is check one or more of the following. It's not check one. Somebody could theoretically check all of them. We'll talk about what to do when that happens in just a moment. But we're looking for, are you a minority-owned business? Are you a women-owned business? Are you an LGBTQI plus business? Okay, or maybe none of these apply, or I do not wish to provide the information. So you have to make the request. And so we'll start with that. Hey, there's no skipping over this. You're required to ask this question. And so that's step one in your procedures. Step two, okay, you're not required by the regulation to assist with completion of this. All I have to do is present the question to Diane. If she's sitting in front of me, the easiest thing to do is slide the piece of paper across the desk. Okay, and so she can take and look at it and read it for herself and provide what she wants to, or not provide any information. All of that's an option, obviously. Leaving it blank is an option. Okay, we don't have to have an actual confirmed response from them. So we're going to ask the question, and we're not required to assist. Now, with the assist part, there's one caveat to that, but there's an easy way around it. And we've talked about this before, but I'll remind you that the LGBTQI plus, okay, that acronym, it's not spelled out on the form, and it's not required to be spelled out on the form, but in the regulation, there is a requirement that if it's not on the form, that you have a procedure that if asked what the definition is for LGBTQI plus, that you provide it. Well, the easy workaround here is, if you guys go to page number 14 in your books, on page 14, letter C with the right-hand parenthesis, in that first paragraph underneath letter C on the bottom of page 14, you'll find the definition spelled out of what LGBTQI plus is. It's not very long, and there is plenty of additional space on the front of this form to add that definition. In fact, if you look close at it, there's other definitions. Minorities defined. Hey, I would have thought in the model form they would have added this. That wouldn't have taken much, but they didn't. Hey, you can choose to add that definition so as not to have that procedure, hey, so as not to have people miss it or skip out on it in the event that somebody asks for it. So I would add that to the form and ask your form vendors, if you're relying on one, to get that done so that you don't have to have that extra procedure. Next, as far as procedures go, if you're going to do applications over the phone, I imagine, because you're not going to make everybody come in person and slide a piece of paper across the desk. You could mail forms out to people. That'd be fine. But if you do the request over the phone, like, I think that you at least need to be prepared for that. Remember, just like we talked about with the previous section, there's disclaimers. There are disclaimers that includes things like the Diane, when I start asking these questions, you need to know you have the right to refuse to answer them. Hey, you don't have to answer anything relative to what I'm going to ask on this 2-page collection form. Okay. Additionally, if the applicant says, no, I don't want to provide this information, I need to document that accordingly. So if it's verbal, I need to document it. If Diane checks that box, that's fine. It needs to be acknowledged. So applicant declining to provide the information, what that means is they've affirmatively checked the box or provided me a response that is, I don't want to provide this information. And that's okay. Now, if we're getting a large volume of these, remember that goes back to the time and manner. Okay, that's something you need to be monitoring for. So if we see a very high volume of this, hey, we probably need to be looking a little closer at things. And you can't not do the monitoring, because that's a required procedure we talked about back in the first part of this 3-part session. If they leave it blank, that's not provided by the applicant. That certainly can be the condition. So if we request the information from Diane and she submits it and doesn't check anything, it's left blank. Now, if we're having a verbal, I'm going to ask her the question, and we're not going to have a left blank if it's a verbal or an in-person thing, because I'm going to get an affirmative answer from Diane that she doesn't wish to provide the information. So left blank is going to be reserved when there's no interaction. I mailed it out, that sort of thing. They downloaded it from something, an email or something like that. The applicant's responses, don't mess with them. Okay, whatever Diane provides or doesn't provide, that's what gets reported. So we're not going to mess with anything. Oh, well, she meant, nope, there's no you meant to. There's no taking page 2 information and go, well, gosh, somebody checked a minority on page 2, that they must be a minority-owned business. Or, gosh, they indicated they're female, they must be a women-owned. No, we don't get to connect dots. Steer clear of that stuff. Okay, we don't mess with responses. So make sure that's clear in both your training and your procedures. When it comes to the applicant that checks multiple boxes. Now again, if Diane's in front of me, I'm going to be able to direct this a little bit, right? We're not going to have Diane selecting that she's women-owned and she doesn't wish to provide the information, because if she tells me she's women-owned, we're going to move on. We're not even going to get to the do not wish to provide because hey, she provided information. But if I mail this out, hey, or emailed or something like that, in theory, somebody could check all the boxes, hey, or multiple boxes. So like the example I'm showing you on the screen. If they check I do not wish plus something else, you ignore the I do not wish part of it, because the more substantive response would be something that is specific to minority, women-owned, or LGBTQI+. And so we'll need to make sure that that's spelled out. I know little things like this matter, but the rule goes there. We need to make sure we've got a procedure for making certain that we report it accordingly. Kind of along the lines of don't mess with their responses. We need to make sure that we're not doing any sort of visual observation or verification. So this is different than what we talked about with principal owners. With principal owners, if we get verified information, we report verified information. Now, we're not required to go there, but we can. And what we learned in just the discussion that Diane brought to the table, that with the BSA stuff that we have to do, there's going to be going there, and we're going to have to handle that. Here, you can't even go there. And so whatever we get or don't get, and then we don't try to connect dots or logically do anything with page 2 information again, it's whatever we get or we don't get, that's what we report. No visual observations, no verifications. The combined request form, again, I'm going to recommend that you use the model form, but what I'm trying to lead you to here is this. The information we're asking has to be part of a separate form. You cannot put business ownership status questions on a traditional application form. It's got to be separate, because in addition to it being collected on a separate form, it also can't be stored with other application information. And again, we've covered that in previous discussions as well, but just a reminder. And then the 2-page model form does have all of the required language notices that have to be provided ahead of the question. You cannot just jump to the questions. That's something that'll have to be rolled out and emphasized in the training, but also should be outlined in the procedures that you're going to write up relative to the roadmap for how your team is going to collect the business ownership status on page number 1.